For my final project, I focused on the Global Development Dataset. An abstraction is taking a real-world, complex entity with a lot of information and data and simplifying it by focusing on a certain set of relevant properties. Country is a string property in this list and allows you to filter which country you choose to abstract further. Year is an integer property and allows you to show the information for whatever year or years you chose. Data is a dictionary property and includes 4 more dictionaries: health, infrastructure, rural development, and urban development, each of which include important information and float values within those categories. From the Global Development Dataset, I focused on birth rate in Zimbabwe and Tanzania and death rate in Chad, Albania, and Sweden. The first limitation is that it only includes information from 1980 to 2013, which makes it hard to make accurate conclusions about changes and patterns over a long period of time. Also, the only main keys on this dataset are health, infrastructure, rural development, and urban development, which are not the only aspects that go into the development of a country, like government, economy, water availability, corruption, and much more. The last limitation is that because this includes a lot of developing countries with not as advanced systems of record keeping, they might not have the most accurate and precise measurements of people in their country. This could be an issue in trying to recognize issues or trends in correlation of these regions. This data map shows the full abstraction of the Global Development Dataset, which is a dataset full of dictionaries. Country is a string value and year is an integer value, as I said before, and data is a dictionary property. And within that, I focus on 3 other dictionaries: health, rural development, and urban development. Each of these respectively include the data and birth and death rates, rural population and urban population. Currently, the Earth is populated by 7.5 billion people, and that number is only rapidly growing. The highest fertility rate in the world is sub-Saharan Africa, so making birth control available to women there is of the utmost importance, as we want to make sure our population is growing at a rate the Earth and its resources can survive. My question is, how has birth rate changed in Zimbabwe, a country that the UN Trends in Contraceptive Use Worldwide report of 2013 says has contraceptive prevalence levels of up to 50%. The visualization shows that birth rate in Zimbabwe over the last 30 years has decreased drastically. This shows that family planning in Zimbabwe has been successful over time and has decreased birth rates by 100 people by over 20 births. This is a huge success as it gives the country's resources and economy more time to adjust and react to its population growth. My second question is, how does living in an urban area affect birth rate compared to living in a rural area? I chose Tanzania for this question and wanted to know if countries with a high rural populations, like Tanzania, had any obvious trends in birth rate depending on where people lived. The visualization indicates a negative direct correlation between percent of people living in urban areas and birth rate. As the percent of people who live in urban areas increases, birth rate decreases. A reason for this could be that larger city populations translate to more people and more organizations in a certain area, allowing the people to live in those regions access to what they have to offer, one of which is birth control and family planning education. The UN classifies countries into 3 categories based off their economies: developed, transitional, and developing. My question is, how do the death rates in 3 different countries compare to each other? Death rate is the ratio of deaths of a certain population per year. How quickly and at what rate people are dying can tell you a lot about that country, and that's what I wanted to compare more. The developed nation I chose is Sweden, the transitional is Albania, and the developing country I chose is Chad. Here are the visualizations for that question. I was both surprised and understanding of these visualizations. Chad shows there's been a relatively steady decrease in death rate over the last 30 years. Chad started off with 21 deaths and a low of 14, while both Albania and Sweden never had a high over 12. This I was not surprised by, as developing nations like Chad do not have as advanced medications in health research and care. Chad also, though, had the greatest decrease in death rate, which could be more NGOs, nonprofits, and governments, like human rights groups, taking more of an interest in that area over time. The Albania visualization shows the death rate steadily declined from 1980 to 1988, increased again between the 90s and the 2000s, and then continued to increase. Citizens in countries that are not necessarily developed, yet are also not considered to be developing, have better access to doctors and healthier standards of living, yet are not fully developed economies, and governments could be reasons for dips in the data. Sweden overall increases from 1980 to 2013, yet had many peaks and valleys. This reason, I assume, is that unlike Chad or Albania, Sweden is more developed, industrialized, and advanced, and probably has better record keeping. Thus, while death rate is increasing in Sweden, it has the most accurate data, and the medical records in the country implies the most accurate representation of changes in death rate over time. The stakeholders in this project include local and federal governments, healthcare workers, NGOs, inhabitants, and future inhabitants of the countries. Governments can look at specific data and see if there's maybe a problem area that they should focus on. They can use this data to identify areas of a problem or one factor of their country is heavily affecting the other and if they should do something about it. Also, I wanted to focus heavily on healthcare, like birth rate, fertility rate, and family planning. So healthcare workers and nonprofits related to healthcare would be very interested in this data, as it can show them just how effective their current healthcare system is and if there's any areas in which they need to improve / reach a larger audience. Finally, current inhabitants of this country can use this data to identify current status of where they live and if there has been any improvement over time. If not, they might be concerned with how their government is handling these situations and if overall development for everyone is a possibility in the future. Future inhabitants would be interested in this too, as it shows if their country is actually caring about the development and improvement in the future and if they actually want to move there. And this is my honor code. Thank you.